Welcome to Life Stories, where we share real-life experiences that will move and inspire you. Today's story is about betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, reclaiming one's power. It's the story of a woman who thought she was about to marry the man of her dreams, only to wake up on her wedding day to a shocking revelation. Her fiancé had betrayed her in the most unexpected way. But what she does next will surprise you. Don't miss the twists and turns that follow. Subscribe to the channel and join us as we begin today's story. It was the morning of my wedding. A day I had been waiting for my entire life. The day I had planned every detail of, from the flowers to the seating arrangement, to the perfect dress. My heart fluttered with excitement and nerves as I slowly opened my eyes. The soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. It was supposed to be a day of joy, of love. A day where I would walk down the aisle and start a new chapter with the man I had chosen to spend my life with. As I reached for my phone, I felt a flutter of anticipation. I had been checking it every few minutes, hoping to see some last-minute congratulations from friends and family. But what I saw instead made my stomach drop. The text came from Karen, my future mother-in-law. She had never really liked me. From the moment I met her, it was clear that she was not thrilled about me being with her son, Ryan. She was always polite when he was around. But when it was just the two of us, she made it perfectly clear that she thought I wasn't good enough for him. She hated my dress. She didn't like the venue I had chosen. She thought I was making all the wrong decisions for my own wedding. I had brushed it off as typical overbearing mother behavior. After all, she loved her son, and maybe it was just hard for her to let go. But this text? This was different. It read, "We've taken your dress. The venue is cancelled, and Ryan knows what's best. Don't make a scene. Just accept it." At first, I thought I was still dreaming. I blinked, trying to process the words. But they didn't make sense. I read it again, and again, and again, until the gravity of the situation sank in. I was awake. It wasn't a nightmare. My heart pounded in my chest, and my hands began to shake as panic set in. My wedding day, was being ripped away from me in the cruelest possible way. I immediately called Ryan. His phone went straight to voicemail. I tried my maid of honor, Sarah. No answer. I called the venue, praying for some sort of explanation. But the woman on the other end hesitated before she confirmed it. Yes, Ryan called early this morning and cancelled everything. I'm so sorry. That was it. There was no more doubt. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. Ryan had done this. He had cancelled our wedding. Without even telling me. It felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under me. And I was falling into an abyss of confusion, hurt, and disbelief. I ran to my closet, hoping to find some shred of normalcy. My dress, the dress I had spent months choosing, the dress I had dreamt of wearing for years, was gone. My shoes, my veil, everything was missing. All the pieces of my perfect day had been stolen from me in an instant. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. But I didn't have time to fall apart. Something in me snapped. I couldn't just sit there and let them ruin everything. I had worked too hard, invested too much, and loved Ryan too deeply to let this go without a fight. They thought they could break me. They were wrong. I grabbed the first clothes I could find and threw them on. Sweatpants, a t-shirt. I didn't care. I was already in a state of panic. But I had to act. I couldn't stay there waiting for the worst to come. If they had taken my dress, someone had to have it. I knew exactly where I needed to go. I didn't drive to Ryan's house. Somehow, I knew that would be a waste of time. Instead, I drove straight to Karen's house. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath coming faster with each passing second. I was furious, hurt, but most of all, I felt betrayed. Betrayed by the woman who had acted like she wanted me as a part of her family, only to tear everything away from me when I least expected it. When Karen opened the door, I saw the satisfaction in her eyes. She wasn't surprised to see me. She wasn't even apologetic. She just stood there, smug and indifferent, like I was some sort of inconvenience to her carefully laid plans. I could feel the anger rising in me. But I kept my voice calm. I had to keep control of myself. I had to make sure I didn't break down in front of her. "You need to calm down," Karen said, her tone dismissive. "Calm down?" I nearly shouted, but I forced myself to stay composed. "Where's my dress?" I demanded. Karen didn't flinch. She didn't even look upset. Instead, she just smiled, that smug smile I had grown so used to. "It's gone," she said flatly, "and you won't need it anyway. The wedding is off." I felt my chest tighten, my heart racing. "You don't have the power to cancel my wedding," I snapped, but I knew it wasn't going to matter. They had already made their decision. Ryan was already part of this scheme, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. "Ryan made the call," Karen said coolly, her voice dripping with disdain. "He's doing what's best for you." I took a deep breath. "Where is he?" I asked, trying to hold it together. "Busy," Karen replied dismissively, turning away from me as if I didn't matter. As if everything I had worked for didn't matter. I knew then that there was no point in asking her for anything. I wasn't going to get any answers from her. I turned and walked away, my mind reeling, my body trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. I drove straight to the venue, my mind swirling with a chaotic mix of anger, confusion, and betrayal. Each mile felt like an eternity. The more I thought about what Karen had said, the more it seemed like a cruel joke, something I could not believe. I had spent months planning every detail of this wedding. It was supposed to be our day, a celebration of love and commitment. But instead, I was watching it slip through my fingers. I couldn't just stand by and let it happen. As I pulled into the parking lot of the venue, my heart sank. Cars were pulling in, guests were arriving, and the venue was decorated exactly as I had planned. There was no sign of the chaos Karen had led me to believe. There was no cancellation. There was only a wedding. But it wasn't my wedding anymore. I couldn't even breathe for a moment. My body moved on autopilot as I got out of the car and walked toward the entrance. The soft whispers of familiar voices filled the air as I passed people I knew. People who had been invited to my wedding. They smiled at me, unaware of the storm that was about to break loose. No one stopped me. No one even blinked when I walked past. I couldn't help but feel like a ghost in my own life as I moved toward the doors. The wedding guests didn't know what had happened. They didn't know that I was supposed to be the one standing there, waiting for Ryan, ready to marry him. Instead, they were all sitting there, oblivious to the truth. I stepped inside, trying to hold back the flood of emotions that threatened to consume me. And there she was, Jessica, my best friend, the one person I trusted with all my heart. She was standing at the altar, in my wedding dress. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart slamming into my ribcage. The room blurred before me as a wave of rage washed over me, followed by an overwhelming sense of coldness. I felt sick, betrayed. How could she be standing there, wearing my dress, in front of all our friends and family, like I didn't even exist? The answer was simple. She had always been close with Ryan. I had ignored the signs, the subtle comments, the way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I had trusted her, just like I had trusted Ryan. And now, here she was, taking my place. I could barely contain myself as I stood there, paralyzed by the weight of the betrayal. Ryan was standing beside her, smiling as if this was all just part of the plan. His face was calm, relaxed, like nothing was wrong, like it was all perfectly normal. But inside, I could feel the rage building in me. The humiliation, the anger, the crushing disappointment. They had planned this. Every detail, every moment of my life that I had believed was real, had been orchestrated behind my back. They had let me spend months planning a wedding, sending out invitations, spending thousands of dollars. All the while, Ryan and Jessica were playing me for a fool, leading me to believe that I was going to marry the man of my dreams. They didn't just cancel the wedding. They had stolen it. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't the bride anymore. Jessica was. Ryan wasn't my fiancé. He was hers. I felt like a stranger in my own life. My heart ached as I watched the scene unfold in front of me. But I couldn't let them see me break. I couldn't let them win. I had to hold onto something. Some shred of dignity, even if it was all falling apart around me. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. I took a step forward, my eyes never leaving Ryan and Jessica. The whispers began, soft at first, but then they grew louder as people began to realize something wasn't right. I could hear people questioning, talking amongst themselves, their voices tinged with confusion. But no one stopped me. No one tried to intervene. I reached the front row. And that's when Martha, standing proudly at the front of the room, locked eyes with me. There was no surprise in her gaze. There was only smug satisfaction. I could see the fear flash in her eyes for a split second. But she quickly masked it with a stern look. She stepped forward, blocking me from moving closer. "You need to leave," Martha hissed, her voice low and threatening. I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. "Actually, I think I'll stay," I said, my voice steady but filled with an intensity I hadn't known I had. The room went silent, all eyes on me. The tension in the air was thick, and I could feel it choking me. But I stood my ground. I wasn't going to let them erase me. Not today. Not like this. Martha opened her mouth to argue. But I was done listening. I wasn't going to let her win. Not after everything they had done. The whispers grew louder, the air heavier with the realization that something was very wrong. Guests were starting to take notice. I could see their confused faces as they turned from one another, murmuring, wondering what was going on. Some looked at me with recognition, others with confusion, but all of them were watching, waiting for something to happen. I could feel the weight of their gaze. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except putting an end to the lies. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as I stood there, facing Martha, who was trying so desperately to hold on to the illusion she had created. Her voice was shrill as she demanded I leave. But I wasn't going anywhere. "You weren't invited," she said, forcing a smile, her hands trembling with the effort to maintain her composure. I couldn't help but laugh. The sound was sharp, bitter, and full of disbelief. "Really? Because last I checked, this was my wedding." The guests were starting to murmur, their curiosity piqued by the tension between Martha and me. I could feel the energy in the room shift. I could feel people's eyes turning from Martha and Jessica to me, wondering what was going to happen next. Ryan turned then, his expression blank, but his eyes, the look in his eyes, told me everything I needed to know. There was panic, a flicker of realization that he had underestimated me, that he had underestimated what I would do in the face of this betrayal. I stepped closer, my voice calm but seething with rage. "How long, Ryan? How long have you been planning this?" I demanded, my gaze never leaving his. He didn't answer right away. His eyes flickered nervously, and for a brief moment, I could see the truth in his silence. It wasn't just a last-minute decision. It wasn't just some rash, impulsive move. It had all been planned. They had let me plan the wedding, let me invest my time and money. And all the while, Ryan was preparing to marry someone else. Jessica stood there beside him, her hands nervously clutching the dress, looking around like a lost child, too scared to speak. I couldn't believe it. This woman, who had been my friend, who I had trusted with my life, was standing at the altar with my fiancé, wearing my dress, as though I had never existed. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her everything I had kept inside. But I didn't have time for that. I needed to focus on what was important, exposing the truth. I turned back to Ryan, who was still silent. "How long?" I asked again, my voice louder this time. "How long did you think you could keep this from me? Did you think I would just disappear, fade away like I was nothing?" Ryan swallowed hard but remained silent, his face pale. The guests were starting to shift uncomfortably, their whispers growing louder, but still, no one spoke up. That's when I did it. I pulled out my phone and hit play, letting the recording I had made earlier, the recording that Martha had left on my phone, fill the room. "We've taken your dress," Martha's voice blared through the speakers. "The venue is cancelled. And Ryan knows what's best. Don't make a scene. Just accept it. The room went completely silent. It was as though time had frozen. And for a moment, all I could hear was the pounding of my heart in my chest. People gasped. Some even took a step back, as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. And then, Ryan's voice, cold and emotionless, came through the speakers. "Babe, I'm sorry, but my mom is right. You're just not good enough for me. Jessica is better suited for me. She'll be a proper wife." The gasps in the room were deafening. I could feel my heart breaking all over again, but I refused to let it show. I stood tall, my back straight, and I stared at Ryan, at Jessica, and at Martha, who looked as though she might faint. I looked directly at Jessica, who had gone pale, her eyes wide with shock. "Still want him?" I asked coldly. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped back, her face contorting in guilt, before she turned and bolted out of the room, her footsteps echoing down the hall. But I wasn't done. No, not yet. I had one more card to play. I pulled out another piece of paper. "You know what else I have?" I said, unfolding it slowly. The bill for the wedding, the one Ryan had never even mentioned. The one that he had agreed to before everything went wrong. $35, I said, reading the number off the paper. "And if you don't pay, well, you know I love a good public scandal." The color drained from Ryan's face. "You can't." "I can," I interrupted, my voice ice cold. "It's in writing. Signed. Legal." I smiled then, the smile of someone who had finally taken control of their own life. The power had shifted. They thought they could destroy me, humiliate me, erase me from their lives. But they were wrong. They had no idea who they were dealing with. As Martha started to sputter, her face growing red with fury, I turned to the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the show," I said, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Because it's not over yet." David, Ryan, looked like a cornered rat, his face a picture of panic. I didn't care. The damage had been done. And now, they would have to face the consequences. Just as Martha opened her mouth to protest, a man in a sharp suit walked through the door, briefcase in hand. "Apologies for the interruption," he said, his voice booming across the room. And just like that, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. My lawyer stepped forward, and I knew this was only the beginning. As my lawyer stepped into the room, everything shifted. His calm and confident presence instantly commanded attention. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sense of power return to me. Martha's face turned ashen, and Ryan stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. My lawyer looked at me, nodded, and then turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, "according to the financial agreement signed prior to this event, Mr. Ryan is legally bound to cover all wedding expenses. That includes everything from the venue to the dress, to the countless arrangements that have been made." I could hear gasps ripple through the room. The shock on Ryan's face was undeniable, and I could see the weight of reality sinking in. $335. My lawyer continued, "Non-negotiable." Martha sputtered in disbelief. "This is a scam," she shrieked. But my lawyer didn't flinch. "No, ma'am," he replied, his voice never wavering. "This is the law." The tension in the room was unbearable. But I stood tall, my heart pounding with every word. They had underestimated me. They thought they could break me, humiliate me, but I was still here. I wasn't going to let them win. As the crowd erupted into whispers, Sarah, my supposed best friend, finally spoke up. She confessed the truth, the lies she had been complicit in, and the guilt that had been eating her alive. I couldn't even bring myself to be angry with her, not anymore. And then, as the drama unfolded before us, Rachel returned, furious and desperate. The truth came pouring out. All of it. I was no longer just a victim. I had taken back my power. I walked away, head held high, leaving behind the chaos and the betrayal. Because in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't ruining them, it was walking away and finding my own life. A life far better than the one they tried to trap me in. And when I look back on that day, on that text, on the betrayal, it's not anger I feel anymore. It's peace. And that, I know, is the best revenge of all. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow more life stories.